On mute.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another week, another dollar. That's how we roll, right?
Yes.
Cool, guys. Well, hey, we're gonna dive right in and just go with another session here. And I wanna remind everybody that is sitting in the room and remind everybody that's watching online. The objective of these is they were birthed out of the idea of teaching the team around here to take advantage of real estate investing, which is what we do every day, creating products and services, software mostly, to help people in the general world become real estate investors and succeed as real estate investors. And learning how to do that with the team here is, I think, equally important. And so I do want to jump in. I do need to hit my iPad connected to something, I think, to share my screen.
Right.
I'm trying to remember how we did it.
QuickTime on your
that's right. QuickTime
on
on
computer.
QuickTime on the computer.
And then
This is what we didn't set up ahead of time. Let's see. Let me figure that out. QuickTime on the computer. And gotta find it here. There it is. We'll get this squared, and then it was a new movie recording. Is that right?
and new movie recording.
New movie recording, and then
go to
finding the drop down to the let's see, the iPad, which I don't see. Let's see. Why don't I see the iPad here?
we're in the same Wi-Fi.
I think we are. We'll get this squared away. Wi-Fi. Nope, they connected to different Wi-Fis. There we go. That should allow us. Okay. Now, once they connect to the same Wi-Fi, we should be good to go. Let me just get that squared away, and we'll dive into this. Here's what we want to do. We want to pick up from where we were talking last week about evaluating a cash offer or a financed offer. Meaning, if you're going to make an offer to a seller and cash, 100% cash at closing is going to the seller. Okay, meaning you're going to write a check. You're going to bring in hard money. You're going to bring in private money. You're going to bring in bank financing. However you fund the transaction, the deal, the seller is getting 100% of their cash at closing. Does that make sense? So that's what we're going to define a cash deal as. I'm going to hand you this and see if you can figure out how to get that to connect while I keep talking, because I can't get it to connect. Alternatively is a terms deal. Okay, a terms deal is maybe no cash to the seller at closing and all terms. It's all payments. Okay, so a cash transaction is one payment that goes to the seller. A terms deal is the seller getting their cash over time. That's going to be the difference between a cash offer and a terms offer. Is that making sense to everybody? Okay. Now, why would you do that? Why would it matter to be able to do a cash offer or a terms offer? Who's got an idea?
To get a better deal from the seller.
Yeah.
Depending on what they want.
There you go. You hit the nail on the head. And it's not necessarily what they want, it's what they need, right? A lot of times a seller, if you're talking to a seller, and I don't want to turn this into a sales training call, but a seller might say, I want cash. Well, maybe they're selling a $150,000 rental property and they want cash. Well, how much cash do they want? The real question is, how much cash do they need? Because if you ask them how much they want, they'll say all of it. If you ask them how much they need, you're going to dive into the question of what are they actually wanting the cash for? And maybe they want the cash because they want to buy a new motorhome. Well, maybe they don't need all $150,000 from this up front. Maybe they only need a portion of the cash. So there's all cash offers, which is 100% of the cash going to the seller at closing. There are all terms offers, which is zero cash going to the seller at closing and payments over time. And there are offers in the middle where there's some cash with some terms. Does that make sense? So as we analyze a deal, whether it be the single family rental that we looked at last week, or it is a master lease or something, a terms type of an offer that we're going to look at this week, the question to start is, what does the seller need? Okay, that's how you navigate down this road of an all cash offer or a terms offer. So when we dive into this, what I want everybody to be thinking about and kind of paying attention to is, how do we run the numbers? Because at the end of the day, here's the rule. What a seller wants doesn't matter. What a seller wants doesn't matter. What matters? How much you can pay. Okay? What a seller wants doesn't matter. What matters is how much you can pay. If you remember that, if you keep that in the forefront of your mind, that it's not about the seller's price or getting to the seller's price. It's about knowing your maximum allowable offer. Bottom line, end of story. So you may come up with a bottom line offer of $100,000. The most you could pay all cash is $100,000, but the seller wants to sell for $150,000. If the only arrows in your quiver or tools in your tool belt is an all cash offer, you're not going to make a deal happen. Does that make sense? They want 150, you can offer 100. Period, end of story. Now, you could come up and maybe you convince yourself that you can pay 135. And you're a good negotiator, so you get the seller to realize, they get enough cash out of the transaction if they take 135. So you both come to an agreement of 135, and guess what? Now you overpaid, and that's how you lose money in real estate. As a pilot, I have personal minimums. What do you want?
You can plug this into your computer.
I thought we were connecting via Bluetooth.
No, it's the cable.
Oh, that's what we're doing wrong then. Okay. All right. So as a pilot, there are personal minimums. There are personal minimums around weather. There are personal minimums around a variety of things that make no-go or no-go decisions as a pilot. And if you violate your personal minimums, maybe things work out, right? Because my personal minimums could be lower than a pilot that's been flying for 10,000 hours, right? But I have personal minimums, and over time, my personal minimums evolve as I gain more experience, as I add new arrows to my quiver as a pilot. But if I vary from my personal minimums, what happens? The risk of a bad outcome goes up significantly. So in real estate investing, you have to know what you're willing to pay, and don't deviate from that. Okay? And then if the only arrow in your quiver is pay all cash at closing, you're going to miss on a lot of opportunities to create something that is there, but you don't have the necessary tools, which are terms offers. Make sense? Okay, So the objective of this training is to teach you guys how to go out and get passive income, right? Recurring passive income. Now, the term passive income is a misnomer. It's not passive. It's recurring and residual. It's not passive. Now, you can make it more passive by getting good managers and managing the manager, but you can't make it 100% passive. You have to manage the manager and you have to know what's going on. And certainly there's a transactional effort that goes into the process of setting the deal up, right? You're gonna put effort into setting the deal up to begin with, and then you're gonna go from there as far as reducing your involvement, the passive portion, increasing passivity by reducing your involvement over time by putting good managers in place. But this idea that it's passive is a misnomer. Residual, recurring, not passive. Okay, so let's go back into some numbers, because if we think back to what we talked about last week, we talked about identifying neighborhoods and areas that we wanted to invest in and buy in. Okay, let's just talk about where the current state of the market is today. The market is at a peak. The market is at a high. Now, maybe it keeps going up. To me, it's a complete bubble. It's going up because incomes and rents don't support prices. They're out of whack, right? And so if we think about where we are in the cycle of the real estate market, we're at a high point. Maybe it keeps going up a little bit more. Maybe it flattens out. Maybe it drops. I don't know. We're somewhere in the top of this curve. So when I look at that top of the curve, I want to do two things. I want to buy in price stable markets. I don't want to buy in markets that historically boom and bust. I don't want to buy in Denver, because Denver, that rental you buy today for $375,000, and then the market crashes and it becomes worth $250,000, all of this value just disappeared, right? So I don't really like that scenario. I don't want to buy in a boom and bust market where the current market is today. If we were 2008, or let's say 2010, 2011, 2012, we were post-crash at the bottom, then you do want to buy here because you want to ride those boom and busts back up, right? Today, I want to be in a price-stable, low-priced cash flow market, and I want to be in a neighborhood that is a mix. I want to be in a C-grade neighborhood. And we talked about that right here last week. And the C-grade neighborhoods are a balance or a blend of owner-occupied to non-owner occupied properties, 50-50. That could be 60-40. It could be 65-35. 50-50 is saying that there's a good mix of owner occupants to tenant occupants. There's a good mix of owner occupied properties to landlords. Okay. We just got to get this to connect.
That should be. You should be on there.
Nope. You got to just plug it in. It won't connect.
Yeah,
oh, why did it do that? All right, cool. Excellent. We're hooked up.
Yeah.
So I want you guys to be thinking about the neighborhoods you buy in, and we're going to be in a lower price market in a working class blue collar neighborhood. That's where you want to buy, because prices are right and rents are right. And there's the mix of owner occupants to landlord owned properties. Now, the reason we want to think about this is because of your exit strategy. Now, over time, we'll explore the whole exit strategy, but the idea of introducing it today is to give you guys a big picture of why would we buy in a C neighborhood versus a B neighborhood or a D neighborhood. I want to be in a C grade neighborhood with a good mix of landlord properties and owner occupied properties. Okay.
Hey, Rob, can you explain real quick, when you say low price market, what does that mean? So average single family home in Denver is about $500,000. Is that low price, high price, mid?
Yeah, that's a high price. Denver's a high price market. And historically, if you look over the last 20, 40, 60 years, Denver has a history of booming and busting. Okay, on about a 17, 18-year cycle. So just a little less than a generation, right, is about 20 years. So a little less than a typical generation, Denver booms or busts. It goes up and then it crashes. It goes up and then it crashes. You want to be in a price stable market that historically over the last 20, 40, 60 years has been relatively steady, no big spikes and declines. It over 60 years, it's certainly gone up in value. I'm not saying it hasn't gone up, but it has not gone peaks and valleys. It's risen through a wave, if that makes sense. Okay, so what I want to do is I want us to go and I want us to talk about the math, and I just want to revisit the math on a single family deal that's going to be cash, and then we're going to talk about a terms deal today. Okay, so let's just go down here and just to reorient our brain, we have a single family residential house in a C neighborhood that rents for $900 a month. Okay, that's what we've got. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a garage and no basement. That's our deal. That's our house. Okay. What can we pay for it? And what goes into determining what we can pay for it? I'll tell you. What goes into it and what determines what we can pay for it is 2 things: the rents and how you want your money to perform. Okay, that question is often confusing to people when I say, how do you want your money to perform? Here's what I mean by that. The mainstream financial education tells you that, you know, put your money in the bank. The bank's advertising says, put your money in the bank and we'll pay you 1%, right? And that's financial intelligence, right? That's what the banking system will tell you to do. The stock market gurus will tell you if you can get a consistent 6 to 8% on your money, generally, that's a good return. So the masses of people believe that 6 to 8% return, if they can do that is a stable or safe return. That's what they've been conditioned to believe. If you go above that, we say, but hey, as active operators, as people pursuing knowledge, how do we want our money to perform? Well, the more money you have, the more flexible you are in how high you want that money to perform. It simply comes down to a deployment of capital, right? If you've got 10 or 15 or $20 million, deploying all of that capital at a 12% rate of return, it's hard to deploy the capital. Okay, so sometimes you might say, I'm okay if I put it to work at 10%. I'm okay if I put it to work at 8%. Now the reality is, I can show you guys stuff all day long on single transactions, even on strategies that you can employ where you can make, you know, double digits, 20, 30, 50, even triple digit returns. Okay, that's not hard. It's not hard to get really high returns on your money. The thing I said last week that I want to repeat today, don't chase ROI, chase real cash, right? Chase the real dollars that are coming into your life and into your bank account. So we're going to look at this 3-bedroom, 2-bath garage with no basement house. And we're going to ask our the question, how do we want our money to perform? So I'm going to grab my calculator, and you guys can do the calculation along with me. I'd grab your calculators and say, what do we first have to do? We're not going to look at the value of the house. Okay, I really don't care right now at this point what the value of the house is, the after repaired value. I don't care. Because number one, I'm not trying to flip it, right? I'm not going to buy it and sell it. So I don't need to know the value per se. We're going to look at the value because there's a checks and balance you want to have, but I don't care about the after repaired value. Because also I'm not going to refinance it. If I was planning to pay cash and then refinance it and get my cash back, then I need to pay attention to the values, okay? But that's the reason you pay attention to the after repaired value, okay? Because you either want to resell it quickly or because you want to refinance it and you need a bank to appraise it. Okay, if a bank's going to appraise it, then you need to know how is it going to appraise. If you're going to resell it, you need to know a buyer's going to look at the price and say, what will it appraise for? Okay, so after repaired value really comes into understanding your exit strategy or your capital strategy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this $900 a month and we care about the rent. In order to figure out how much we can pay, we care about the rent. So we're going to take $900 and we're going to estimate our taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, and vacancy at about 30%, just for easy math. So we're going to take 900 times 0.7. 900 times 0.7 gives us what? $630 per month is known as what? Our net operating income. Okay, now we're going to use a cap rate formula because that's the easy way to run the math. And as I mentioned last week, and we didn't really get comments that suggested that there was we didn't have a bunch of the multifamily guys coming in and saying, or the commercial guys saying, hey, you can't use cap rates on single family houses. Yeah, you can, because it's smart math. It served me well for 20 years. It comes out of the commercial real estate world, but can be perfectly applied to rental income. It is a tool that is often used to help evaluate different asset types against a capitalization rate. Exclusive of debt, no debt is included in the calculation of cap rate, but we're simply looking at how do you want your money to perform? That's the answer. So we take our net operating income, and that's how much money we put into our pocket, hip pocket National Bank every single month. So $630 a month times, not divided by, times 12 months equals what? 630 times 12, 7560, $7,560 annually. So per year. That's how much money you're going to put in your pocket net after you pay taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, and vacancy. Does that make sense? Now, how does this question of how do you want your money to perform come into play?
Cap rate times point. If you want your cap rate to be 12, you do divided by 0.12.
Yep. So if you want your money, if you're going to pay cash for this house, okay, if you're going to pay cash for this house and you want your money to perform at 12% annually, you take the annual net operating income, 7560, divided by 12%. Okay, and that equals, so divided by 0.12, that equals the most you can pay is $63,000. Actually, let me rephrase that. You're all in cash. You're all in cash. Purchase price plus repairs plus anything else, you can be all in at $63,000. Okay? If you paid $63,000 for this house and rented it out for $900 a month and put $630 a month in your pocket and paid cash for it, your money is performing at 12%. Okay, so then we have to ask the question, what are the repairs? Okay, so the repairs on this house, let's just estimate our repairs are $15,000. Okay, repairs are $15,000. So what can we actually pay for the house?
48.
$48,000. Okay, so our maximum allowable offer is $48,000. It's our all-in capital minus the repairs equals $48,000. Now, let's talk about this for a second. If these are our true numbers and we rent it out for $900 a month and we have a net operating income of $630 a month, how would we fund this? How could we fund this transaction? Okay, you could pay cash, right? You could pay cash, or you could do what?
Find an investor that's looking for a cap rate less than 12.
Not exactly, kind of, but not exactly looking for an investor with a cap rate of less than 12. What you're looking for is a cap. You have to decide now, how much real money are you going to put in your pocket every single month? You have how much to work with? You have $630 a month to work with, right? So let's say that you want to put minimum $250 a month in your pocket on this house, right? So you're gonna take out your $250 a month, and that leaves you with what left? $630 minus $250. You have $380 a month that you can pay a private lender. Does that make sense? Because what you've done is you've accounted for taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, and vacancy, right? In your 30%. Now, this number is an arbitrary guess that I'm just using for quick and easy math. You have to look at the real numbers when you really get in there. You have to ask, what are the taxes in this county? Are there city taxes as well? What are the true taxes on this house? What is my insurance going to be? Do I have a stick-built house? Do I have a brick-built house? Do I have a block house? Am I in a hurricane? Am I a zone? What are my true insurance costs? Maintenance, management, and then vacancy. So we're gonna assume that we plugged all these numbers in, and the 30% is that quick and dirty number to get us here. It could be 35%. It could be 28%. It really varies. Okay. So we come down here and we say we have $380 a month. How much money could I then borrow based on the fact that I can pay $380 a month for my debt service? So I can go out and find a private lender now who doesn't want to own the real estate, who doesn't want to evaluate the real estate, who doesn't want to manage the real estate, who doesn't want to do any of that other stuff. I've got $380 a month. Okay. So let's take the $380 a month, multiply it by 12. So I take my $380 times 12, and I get $4,560 per year that I can pay the private lender. So how much could I borrow? What is the next piece of the equation? What interest rate are they looking for their money to perform at, right? So now we're going to get to less than 12%, right? But there's ways to structure deals where that is less relevant as well, where we kind of don't even care. The main point, because you could get a private lender that wants more than 12%, that just means you got to come out of pocket with a little bit of cash, right? Or figure out how the math exactly works out. But let's say that you have a private lender that's willing to take, I don't know, 7%. Okay, that 6 to 8% is what most people consider a good, safe return. And it sure the heck beats what most people get in reality. Most people see their statements come in every month from their stock plans and their IRAs and their 401ks and their thing, and they think that they have real money. It's not real money until you realize the money. It's a piece of paper. Why did so many people get wiped out in the big scams of the last decade, right? Well, it's because it was all paper, and they hadn't realized the returns. As a private lender, you're realizing those returns every month or every quarter because you're getting cash flow payments. So let's take our 4560 and let's divide it by 7%, the interest rate that you're going to pay your private lender. 4560 divided by 0.07 is, you could borrow as much as $65,142. And how much do you need to be all in? 63. You could borrow 65. You can be all in 63 at the max. So does this deal work? If you're going to pay somebody 7% and have a net cash flow of $250 a month, it works all day long. So what do you need? You need somebody that has $63,000 or $65,000 that wants 7% on their money to become your bank. They'll fund your transaction. So how does this work? Let's just look at this real quick. And this is playing into us getting quickly into looking at a terms deal in a minute. You have a house, you have the owner, and you have the investor. Okay? And so the house is owned by the owner with a deed. You have the owner who pays the lender with a promissory note or a promise to pay, and you have the lender that secures their loan against the house with a deed of trust or a mortgage, depending on what state you're in. Okay, so the lender has security against the asset. Okay, when they lend you the $63,000, they're not saying, "Hey Johnny, I trust you, and here's my $63,000, and see ya, hopefully not in the Bahamas on Facebook," right? There's some security that they have here. Now, certainly there's trust. There is trust involved and relationship involved in doing this. But when they take their money, what do? They don't send you their money. When you're going to fund this deal, they don't send the money to you or to me. The money goes straight to the closing agent. So they're going to send their $63,000 to the closing agent. The closing agent is going to make sure that the deed is recorded, the deed of trust is recorded, and the promissory note is signed. So the private lender doesn't have a lot of risk in that. I always have my private lenders send an email or a note to the closing agent that says, "Hey, if you don't have these 3 things done, don't fund." That way the private lender's money is never at risk without having the proper paperwork in place. Okay, so this deal can be done. How much money did you guys have invested in this deal? If we look at this math, how much money, what kind of a down payment did you guys have to come up with?
None.
0, right? So the private lender funded 100% of the deal, right? How stringent were the qualification factors of the bank that funded this deal?
There was no bank.
There was no bank, none, right? What you had to be able to do was explain the transaction. You had to be able to explain why you pay what you pay. You had to be able to explain that this $900 a month rent is the controlling factor in this deal. Now, what I would do, looking at a scenario at a scenario like this, oftentimes I'll start with, I try to set it up where we split the cash flow, meaning there's $630 a month net coming in. So if I take that 630 divided by 2, $315 a month to you, private lender, $315 a month to me. I generally position private lending as we split it, and then I'll usually position it as I have a minimum of $250 a door net that has to come to me in order for it to be worth my time. And then I'll show this math, and I'll show the private lender how then in this case I can pay up to 380. I'm taking a little less, I'm giving you a little more in order to get the deal done, and everybody's happy. Does that make sense? That's how the math goes. And this is Private Lender 101 intro to understand why it works, why there's security in this deal. Okay, let's look at a master lease. Okay, we now know how to do this deal for cash. Actually, before I go there, let's go back up and do one thing. Let's talk about the equity that's in this deal. Once you buy it for 48, you fix it up for 15, and you rent it for 900. You asked yourself, what will this house rent for once it's fixed up? You didn't ask yourself, what will it rent for in its current condition? Because in its current condition, it might only rent for 700 because it's kind of beat up, right? Maybe 625. But once you put 15 grand into it, fix it up, clean it up, safe, functional, and clean, it'll rent for 900 because that's what the market rent on a fixed up, decent, safe, functional house in the neighborhood will rent for, right? And so we're asking what the rent is based on the fixed up condition of the house. And now we also want to consider what is the value of this house once fixed up. We just want to come back, circle back in, because that's part of the conversation with a private lender. And generally, and I'm just going to give you guys a rule of thumb, you're always going to just want to go look and ask yourself, what are houses selling for in the area? But when you go into, we're going to come back to master lease in a minute. When you go into an area, you're going to see two types of properties that you're going to comp. You're going to see retail sales, and you're going to see investor sales. Which one is higher?
Depends on the neighborhood.
Not really.
Are we talking price?
Yeah, retail sales are always higher.
Oh, price.
Investor sales are always lower. Okay. In certain neighborhoods, you see very few retail sales and you see almost all investor sales. Okay. So investor sales, you might, like your sale that you just bought for 48, you're going to see that $48,000 in the sales comps. So you might come in and say, oh man, houses in this area are only worth $48,000 because investors come in and pay cash, right? At a low price. Then they fix them up, they rent them out. And if you're not in a flip area, you're never seeing the higher sale prices. Okay. So this is a problem if your plan is to go refinance, pay off your private lender, or get your cash back. If you don't see those higher prices, the bank that you work with has to understand how to value based on rent. Okay. And it becomes a problem because banks have pretty stringent requirements. So if you understand that there are retail sales in an area and there are investor sales in an area, we understand that investors always pay cash at a discount, or almost always pay cash at a discount, we can recognize that even though we see 48,000, 42,000, 56,000 as the sale prices over the last 90 days, those are all investors buying, and those investors are then going and putting $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 into those properties in order to increase the value. Okay, so a rule of thumb that I typically look at is I'll take that $900 rent divided by 0.01, and I'll estimate an after repaired value of about $90,000. Not hard and fast. And in fact, probably I'll usually go about 5,000 lower than that. So I'll probably say on a $900 a month rent house, my after repaired value is about 85,000. Okay, does that make sense? A bank appraisal could completely disagree with you. They'll argue with you. They won't give you the appraisal. At the end of the day, you have to, if you're in an area that has both retail sales and investor sales, you'll see the investor buying cheap and then reselling high. Investor buying cheap and reselling high. So if you look at an area and you see the sales over the last 90 days, you're gonna see low prices and high prices. What's the difference between them? Typically condition. That's the difference. So you know, if you buy cheap, fix it up, put money into it, you're gonna have the higher value after repairs, after repaired value. Does that make sense? Okay, I just wanted to talk about ARV as it relates to building cash flow. Now, I have a lot of private lenders that I never refinance them. I don't pay it off. I just let them ride, and they love getting their cash flow every month. I love getting my cash flow every month, and we're all happy. Okay, so you don't have to refinance it out, but an investor, a private lender, may ask you, what is the house worth fixed up? And you have to be able to explain, because they went on Zillow and they saw all the $48,000, $42,000, $51,000 sales, and they're going to lend 63. You have to be able to explain that investors are buying it for 50, putting 20 into it, so they're all in at 70, and it's worth more than that, which is why investors are doing that deal. That explains to the private lender that they have an equity position. Because at worst day, what happens? The investor that lent you $63,000, you stop paying, what do? They do one of two things. They call you up and say, hey, Mike, start paying. You start paying, and say, oh, sorry, something happened and I didn't realize the check didn't go out. Number two, and it's legitimately a mistake. Number two, they say, hey, Mike, you're not paying. And you say, yeah, I'm not paying. And they foreclose, right? Or number three, they say you're not paying, you say, yeah, I'm not paying, and then you deed them the house, right? Like two and three, like, should never happen, right? It can be okay to miss something. Don't make it a habit, but life happens, right? But don't make your private lender foreclose. If something happens to your life and you can't do something for the deal, deed them the house, because they now own it for 63, a fixed up house that's rented. Guess what? They could sell it today. It's worth 70, 75, 80, 85. Do you think if they put that fixed up house that's rented for $900 a month on the market and sold it, they could sell it for 65,000? Yeah, right? It's in a neighborhood where investors are buying. The investor looks at that and says, oh, I get to buy a effectively turnkey house. It's already operating. I don't have to buy it cheap, put money into it, and be all in at 70. I can just buy it for 63, 65 and be all in. And remember, if you paid the private lender over time, every year, if you're paying them $380 a month, every year their basis goes down by $4,500. So they lent you $63,000, but after the first year, if they sold and walked away with $58,400, they've gotten all their money back. The cash flow plus what they get. Okay, so the private lender is safe from that perspective. Let's talk about a master lease. Here's what I want you guys to understand. So let's take this. If I'm gonna buy a single family house, I'm probably not going to do a master lease on it. I'm probably not going to try to do a lease with an option to purchase. I could. It's an area you want to have in your quiver, but I'm going to probably try to negotiate owner financing. Okay, we'll talk about that at another time. But if I'm going to do a single family house, I'm probably going to buy it with owner financing. That's not that different than evaluating the deal that we just did. Instead of you bringing in a bank or a private lender, who becomes your private lender?
The owner.
The owner, the seller of the house. The current owner of the house becomes the bank. That's what owner financing is all about, right? And so you could take this same analysis right here and look at this $380 a month. That's how much you have to pay the owner in payments. Does that make sense? So you could offer to pay the seller owner financing with payments and make this whole deal work. Guys, I'll tell you a quick story. I recently bought a hangar for my airplane. Well, last year I bought a hangar for my airplane. And in the North Metro Denver area, hangar space is like a 3 to 5 year waiting list. It's more competitive than single family houses across the country. There's only a handful of airports on the north side of Denver and only a handful of hangar space even available. They're not building new subdivisions of hangar space. Like, that just isn't a thing. And so finding hangar space in a metro area close to where I want it to be was like a 3 to 5 year waiting list. Long story short, that should suggest that no seller of a hangar in their right mind would ever take payments over time, right? There's so much demand, there's so much pent up demand and limited supply that a seller is just going to want to cash out at full price, right? That's what it kind of suggests. Guess what I did? I bought my hangar with owner financing. I took the strategy that we're talking about here. I just applied it to a hangar because I found out what the guy wanted. He needed some cash. This was a blended deal. I put some cash, I gave him some cash at closing, and then he became the bank. So he needed cash for a project he was working on. I gave him that cash. He then became the bank for the rest of the deal. And now I just pay him instead of going out and doing paying a bank or just paying all cash myself. What's cool about the strategy is it solved his problem. He needed some cash, but he loved getting the cash flow off of this hangar. It was a rental before. He used to have his plane in the hangar, then he rented it out, and guess what? His hangar tenant was a deadbeat. Hadn't paid him in 10 months. He was trying to deal with the eviction. All of the things that I bought 1,000 houses negotiating and doing, I said, hey, I'll tell you what if I buy it as is today and I'll deal with the tenant. Long story short, cash for keys, $1,000, the tenant was gone, right? So I just have been down this road so many times. I'm like, let's just offer the guy $1,000 to move out this weekend, or I'll go collect all of the back rent because now I have the assignment of this lease, right? So I go, make your life easier or hard. Easy, I'll give you $1,000, you leave. Hard, I'll go collect, right? So that was me looking at the challenge and saying, I'll take on the challenge and I'll give you, like, it was such a win-win, 3-point win for the seller. He got the cash he needed, he got to keep the cash flow he wanted, and he no longer had to deal with the tenant. That's why owner financing and or terms deals work. Now, we'll come back and talk specific owner financing later in another session, but it's the same analysis that I just did. Instead of it being a private lender, instead of it being a bank, the seller funds your deal. So if you can take what I just taught you and apply that to how do I pay the seller, you can negotiate owner financing deals. Super simple.
From Trev, how common is owner financing? And he said, if you're buying from a distressed seller, I wouldn't think they would be interested in not getting the money fast.
Well, it depends on what they're distressed for, right? So That's why you have to understand, why do they want to sell? Why do they want to sell, right? Sometimes the why is not obvious, right? The distress to you seems obvious. The why would they want to sell doesn't seem obvious. And so, yeah, don't make the, like, here's the thing. When you're talking to a seller, the house and the terms are the last thing you should be thinking about. I don't care that it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 900 square feet on in the center of a block 2 miles from the hospital. I don't care about any of that, right? I don't care about that stuff initially. I might care about some of that later because it's going to affect my ultimate price. But at the beginning, I don't care about the house. I care about, why are you selling? This perfectly good house, or this distressed house that could be solved with $10 or $12 or $15,000 and could become a cash flowing asset for you. Why are you selling? There's a reason. There's a reason they're selling. Okay, so we're going to come back here, and I wanted to answer that question. Let's look at a master lease on a multi-family, because guys, the same kind of stuff we've been talking about on a single family house analysis with an all cash deal. I want to go to an opposite extreme. Let's say that you want to go get $4,000 a month cash flow this month. How do you do it? How do you go get $4,000 a month in residual income cash flow this month? Not passive income, but residual income. Okay. A multifamily deal. Let's just take, let's ask the question, what kind of a deal do you have to look for? If you want, let's say $4,000 a month minimum cash flow, there's a couple things that go into this, right? So you need a net, and let's say that your minimum per door requirement is $200 a door. Your net operating hip pocket National Bank cash in your pocket is $200. Okay, so you take your 4,000 divided by 200. You need a 20 door unit minimum. Okay, does that make sense? So you want $4,000 per month. You, personal minimums, require $200 per door per month. Okay, so 4,000 divided by 200 equals 20. So you need 20 units. Okay, now you can buy 2 10 units. You could buy 4 5 units. You could buy 5 4 units, but you need 20 units to accomplish your goal. Okay, part of hitting a goal is knowing what you need to accomplish it. So we just figured this out. So now let's just say that we're going to go after a 20 unit complex. Now we're going to take our $4,000 a month, and what is this? This is what? Net operating income, right? But is it net operating income? There's also, if you were doing a cash deal on this, there would potentially be some debt involved. Okay, so we're gonna bypass the debt conversation for a minute, and we're gonna go and we're gonna say, let's assume that the $4,000 a month is the net cash flow to you. Okay, so what do you think that you want to pay your private lender, or what do you want to pay the seller of the complex? We got to work our math backwards, right? You guys following me?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get here. Let's see. let's do the backwards math. And if you want $4,000 a month, what are you going to pay your private lender, i.e., or the seller? How did I tell you to think about this? Let's just go into it and say that the same. You're going to split it. You're each going to have $4,000 a month coming in. So now there's $8,000 a month, $8K per month in net operating income. Okay. What are we then going to have to figure out? We got to take taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, and vacancy, Tim V, out, right? And in the case of a multifamily, I want to assume 35%. Okay. It could be a little bit higher, it could be a little bit lower. I'm going to assume 35%. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to take my 8,000 divided by 0.65. So I need 20 units that produce gross $12,000 a month. You guys follow my math?
Yep.
Okay, $12,000 a month. It was actually $12,300, but let's just say $12,000 a month divided by 20 units. Each apartment needs to rent for $600 a month. You guys follow me? Take the $12,000 a month gross divided by 20 units equals $600 a month per unit. Okay, so you need an apartment complex or a combination of 20 units that pay $600 per door, $600 a month. Does that make sense? And I want you guys to see that we started in this case by asking what you want, not what's available. What do you want? Because you then need to go out and find the deal that produces what you want. Okay, so this is how you get to what you want as your minimums. So now let's go take a 20 unit deal where, let's say you're in a C+ neighborhood. Okay, so a little nicer, but not quite to a B. And let's say that it rents out for $800. Each unit rents out for $800 a month. So what do we have? 20 times 800. We have $16,000 per month, right? Gross rent. And to get to our net operating income, we're going to multiply times 0.65. So there's 10,400 per month net operating income, right? And what do you guys want? As a minimum, what do you guys want?
4,000.
You want 4,000. And I'm going to call this Hip Pocket National Bank. Okay, so in Hip Pocket National Bank, you got $4,000 a month, which leaves what? 6,400? Leaves $6,400 to negotiate terms. Okay, you can negotiate terms with the seller. You can negotiate terms with a private lender. You can negotiate terms with a combination. What if the seller gets some of this? And what if a private lender gets some of this? Does that make sense? Okay, so when I did my hangar deal, I didn't bring a private lender in, I just paid cash. My portion of the cash they needed to produce that deal gave me a return on my money, right? The other portion I used to pay the seller and negotiate those terms. So what does this deal look like? You've got this apartment complex, right? And you've got all of these units. And you now have a seller that wants to sell. Do you guys like my drawing here? Isn't that awesome? Like
Best thing.
It's very Memphis.
Right. It's very Memphis. You now have this complex that you go look for and you find, and you've got $6,400 per month to give the seller. So what does this deal look like? Well, $6,400 divided by 20 units, you get $320 a door to pay the seller. Okay. The question that you have to ask is, does the seller owe anything? Is there any debt? Does the seller owe something? Okay. Because if the seller owes something, a portion of what's left right here has to go to service the debt. Okay, so you need to dig into the details of the deal, but at the end of the day, this is all you have to play with. You have $6,400 per month to play with, to service the debt, to pay the seller, to bring in a private lender. That's it. You don't have anything else, because you've set your personal minimum. And where's your personal minimum? Your personal minimum is right here, $4,000 a month or $200 a door. So how does this work? Let's assume that we figured out the math on this. Okay, here's how a master lease works. You've got the seller who owns the property. Okay, seller owns the property. You come in and the seller leases the property to tenants. Okay, the tenants are paying 20 times 800 per month to the seller currently. But the seller's tired of dealing with it for one reason or another. Who knows why? Okay, don't know why, don't care why. As far as running the math, you care why in structuring the deal. You have to know why to structure the deal. For this purpose, we're not going to make up a scenario. It doesn't really matter. What you're going to do is you're going to go into the seller and say, this headache that they have, you are going to solve their headache, and you are going to do what? You are going to send them one check each month and take on the headache. So they no longer have to chase down 20 and deal with the headaches. They get one check from you. The tenants then start paying you as the new master lease. So what happens is you have, let's talk about how this works. You put a master lease in place between you and the seller. A master lease. It's you're going to lease the entire complex at a fixed price. Okay? You're going to master lease it. You're going to have the right to sublease all of the units. Does that make sense? So the idea of the master lease is you don't own it. There's no, if we go back up here, there's no deed transferring hands. The seller still owns the property. The seller still has the tax benefits to the property. Okay? These are great deals to do owner financing on as well. Okay? All cash or terms. Terms, owner financing, master lease. There's other things you can do in there as well. We're just going to focus the discussion for now on these two things. We can go deeper on other stuff later. You put a master lease, a single lease agreement in place with the seller. At the time that you sign that, you also get an assignment of all of the existing leases that are in place. The seller assigns all of those 20 leases to you. So you now become the landlord on those leases, right? So there's a master lease component to this. They assign those leases to you, and now you're subleasing, per your master lease agreement, you're subleasing to the tenants. You guys following me? Generally how this works? That's what it is right there. Okay? you're going to have one master lease in place and the right to sublease the building. Now, you can, and what I typically suggest is you also want to establish or negotiate some kind of a strike price or an option to purchase price with the seller up front. So it could be a master lease with an option to buy. Okay. So you want the option to buy at a certain price in the future. Okay. Let me ask you guys this. Does that option price have to be fixed today? It could be what? It could be escalating. It could have de-escalation clauses. You can come up with whatever crazy ideas to negotiate price and terms of payments that you want. It doesn't matter. This same strategy can be done. We just showed it here on a 20-unit apartment. Same exact strategy can be done on a single family house. Okay, single family house, landlord owns it, rented it out for $900. They no longer want to deal with it. You try to buy it owner financing, for whatever reason that doesn't work today. You can master lease that house with the right to sublease. Okay, and you can establish a price today to buy that house. Now, why is this a beautiful strategy, going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, kind of where the market cycle is today? You control the cash flow without the risk of the ownership. Okay, because if the market crashes and everything goes to heck in a handbasket, we don't want that to happen. And hopefully we've negotiated terms up front with the seller to accommodate if it does happen, but you don't go bankrupt, right? If heck goes, if everything goes to heck in a handbasket, you get on the phone with the seller and you talk to him. You talk to him about the situation, right? And situation, I'm talking about a market crash, a market correction, right? Back in 2008, I know buddies, I know guys and gals that owned 100 plus, 200 plus units, houses, and they lost them all to foreclosure because they were buying at the peak of the market. The market crashed and they didn't have the staying power to service the debt. Okay, so let's look at this scenario, and maybe the market crashes and there's a hiccup in occupancy, or something happens in the short term as everybody's kind of panicking, right? We've seen panic happen in this world, right? And short term, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, if we understand and if we know the amount of debt that has to be serviced, we can get with the seller and we can say, hey, that 6,400 and the 3,000 that was going per month to the debt, for the next 90 days, for the next 4 months, can I service the debt and figure out what we're going to do with this panicking unit, right? All the tenants or whatever, right? There's negotiation that can take place, and you don't get stuck paying a high price at the peak of a market and it corrects and everybody gets screwed. Okay, so let's open this up to some questions, because I know we're coming up on what time do we got here? Yeah, we're a little bit after. Yep. So let's just open it up to some questions, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll come back and do this again. Mike, what questions we got?
So we just have a couple. Back when we were talking about market, so Jonathan on the team, does the pandemic and work from home change cycles, the normal real estate market cycles?
Yeah, for sure. Not because I think the pandemic or work from home changes cycles. I think where we are in the cycle changes cycles. Historically, for the last existence of America, we've gone through short-term debt cycles, right? And debt cycles are created or managed with 3 primary rules, right? Congress gave the Federal Reserve, the power to control the economy by doing three things: adjusting interest rates, which is the Fed's fund rate, which is the rate that banks borrow short-term money, and that establishes the rates at which they lend money. They did it by the right to print currency and put more currency into the market, which ultimately then goes to the banks, which then ultimately goes to the people. And third, to print money, currency, and send it as stimulus directly to the government and then straight to the people and bypass the banks. The reason things are different today is because in the history of the dollar, we've never gotten to that third one at the level that we're at today. In the crash of 2008, it took 14 months for interest rates to go to zero. In 2020, it took 30 days. So the juice of interest rates ratcheting up or down to heat up or cool down the economy was gone. They had no ability to control the economy with interest rate. So they started printing money, and then they started printing stimulus. And that's what happened. So are we at a slightly different phase? Yes. Does the strategy change? Not really. What you want to do is you want to be invested in assets that produce cash flow regardless of the currency in which you're collecting the cash flow from. Okay? I don't care if I'm collecting the currency in US dollar 1.0 or collecting the cash flow in US dollar 2.0. My asset that I own or control has utility value. Somebody has to live there. And if somebody is out earning an income in Bitcoin, let's just throw fiat currency to the wind. If somebody's out earning currency in Bitcoin, and there's a reason that I would want to accept Bitcoin because it can be used in transactions, because I own the asset that they're going to pay to utilize, I can collect whatever currency I want to collect. That's why real estate is a hedge against inflation, deflation, currency collapse, so many things. Doesn't mean that there can't be tough times navigating through that transition, but that's why an asset like real estate works. That makes sense?
Yep.
What else we got?
So Ross said this is gold, so I just appreciate that, Ross. Hey, so check this one out. Rising Time Investments chimes in. First, I want to say this strategy really works since learning this from you. We have acquired 2 rentals that are entirely privately funded. We are 350 plus cash flow positive on each. And then they asked the question, will you be doing a training on private lenders? So it seems like that's going to come up in the fairly near future. So
yep, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about private lenders and more about that as we go forward. But awesome, like congratulations.
Right. Yeah,
that's absolutely fantastic. I don't know who Rising Time Investments is. What's your real name? Who are you? We'd love to know. So let us know.
Yeah, so that's Jackie and Dahlia.
Cool.
Yep.
Excellent.
And
excellent.
Might be a third sister in there. Sorry.
Nice. What else we got? Anything?
Let's see. Any info on being opposite side of the... Okay, so from Steve on our team. Also, will there be any info on being on the opposite side of the deal where you are the private lender and how to analyze deals from that perspective? So that could be an interesting future topic.
Yep.
If you want to play lender and not investor. So.
Absolutely. I've taught a lot of people how to generate cash flow. And sometimes generating cash flow isn't about owning the real estate or even being the operator that controls the real estate. If you've got cash sitting somewhere in a retirement account or cash in the bank and you want to be a private lender, absolutely. You analyze it in much the same way that I'm teaching here, that an operator would analyze the deal. You add one additional piece of analysis. You add in the piece of analysis that says, who am I dealing with? Do I trust the person? Do they have experience? Do they have a network of people that they can rely on that has experience, right? Maybe the person that you're going to lend to doesn't have experience, but there's a network that they have connection to, or a mentor they have, or somebody that does have experience that gives you the trust and the confidence to look at this deal and say, worst case scenario, they screw it up. I can take control of the asset and I can resell it. That's one of the reasons for me as a real estate wholesaler, have been a wholesaler for 20 plus years, but also a fix and flip investor, but also a buy and hold investor. That's why as a private lender, I've never shied away from confidently lending, because I understand the wholesale side of the market. I understand how to go find the buyers. If I lend on a deal in Dayton, Ohio, and I don't own anything else there, and I just want out if the deal goes bad and I end up taking the title to the property, I know easily in Dayton, Ohio, how to go find 6, 8 guys or gals today that would buy that deal from me and make me an offer and just get my cash out. So as a private lender, yeah, you're going to analyze it in much the same way here. You're going to control the flow of your money directly to the title company with an escrow instruction letter telling the title company, don't fund until these 3 things are met. And you're going to evaluate the operator who you're dealing with, and then have some knowledge on exit strategy on how to get your cash back out if the worst case scenario came and you took the asset back. That's the way to do it. And then just realize that, like in any investment, stuff comes up, but the beautiful thing about real estate is it moves so much slower than, say, the stock market or other asset classes, that there's almost always, I've never been in a situation where I haven't been able to go from my plan A, B, C, or D and execute them to get out and be okay. What else, Mike? Anything else?
We're good.
All right. You guys have anything else sitting in here? Okay, cool. Well, guys, we'll wrap it up. Sorry for the couple of technical glitches again. It's easy when we're just sitting here in the office talking about it and then trying to make it available via the live stream. Some of this stuff is more of a pain in the butt, but we'll get it figured out one of these days and have no more issues. So, hey guys, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Love to see your comments and feedback. We'll see you next week. Cheers.